Salt on my tongue, secrets on hers. The first time I knew my marriage was in trouble, it wasn't the lipstick on a glass or a late-night phone-died text. It was time. I could taste it on Elise's mouth when she kissed me hello after work, lemon bright, clinging, and we hadn't cooked with thyme in weeks. Elise is a dentist. The only herbs in her office live on a motivational poster. The flavor wasn't mine. It meant she'd eaten somewhere I didn't know, with someone who cooked like I do. By day, I manage a small restaurant in the garment district, all raw brick and deliberate shadows. By night, behind a cobalt door that looks like a set piece, I run a secret tasting. 8 seats, 1 table, reservations whispered between friends of friends. We call it the Blue Door, not because I'm mysterious, but because I learned years ago that secrets sound expensive if you keep them simple. Elise and I have been together 8 years. She knows my menu by smell and reads my moods the way a sommelier reads a glass. Our home is a choreography of habit, her mug on the left hook, my knives in the block like sleeping soldiers, our Fridays a quiet democracy of takeout and documentaries. We are not dramatic people. That's why the time scared me. Drama had slipped in the back and hung its coat without asking. I told myself it was nothing. We were grown, tired, slightly bored the way comfortable people get. I canceled the thought the way you turn a burner off firmly with practice. But the second time I knew it was saffron, and if time is a whisper, saffron is a flag. You don't eat saffron by accident. Someone chooses it for you and watches your face like they've given you a secret. When Elise kissed me, the air between us tasted golden and a little sweet, as if someone had figured out how to cook sunlight. New lunch spot? I asked casually, because I've learned that questions do not ruin marriages so much as their timing does. A patient sent me to a place near the river, she said, eyes on her phone. Great risotto. Why are you smiling? Just glad you ate something nice, I said, and tried not to think of the Blue Door's Thursday menu. Saffron risotto with grilled peaches and a burnt butter finish. It could have been a coincidence. The city is full of coincidences dressed in impeccable shoes. The third time I knew, I didn't taste it. I saw it. On a slow Thursday, the kind that smears into evening, a woman I didn't recognize slipped into the restaurant 15 minutes before we locked the front and took the corner stool at the bar. She had the weary elegance of someone who can't remember when being beautiful started feeling like a second job. Her dress was charcoal silk that looked like it had learned how to drape from old movies, and when she checked her phone, the light gave her a halo it didn't quite mean. "Is the chef in?" she asked. Her voice had a soft scrape that made me think of records and late rain. "You're talking to him," I said, then corrected myself out of habit I keep. "To the man who pretends he is." A smile twitched and fell. "Right, I'm supposed to say I have a reservation." "For?" She glanced at the Blue Door behind me and then at my face, as if I might be the door in disguise. "For something that only has a color and a time." "You came to the right roomer," I said. "Name?" "Rowan." "And your party?" "Just me," she said, then added, "for now, like a hedge or a dare." There was one seat open at the Blue Door that night. I don't believe in coincidence, but I'm generous with fate. I told her to wait at the bar while I closed the tab on a couple in suits who kept ordering expensive boredom and calling it wine. When I turned back, she was staring at a framed photograph on the back wall. Elise and me at the river, my hand on her shoulder. The kind of happiness you don't know is breakable until someone asks how it happened and you can't answer in one sentence. "You look different with flour on your cheek," Rowan said, nodding at the photo. "More honest," I said. "You bake." "I burn," she said. "But I like watching people not burn. It feels like hope." At 8, the Blue Door opened for 8, and I slipped into host mode. the theater that makes people feel chosen. I introduced Rowan to the table, the band manager with a laugh you could set a clock by, the retired lawyer who wanted to be surprised by tomatoes, the two women celebrating their divorce with oysters and excellent rings, and a man who said he was in consulting, which is a delicate word for money that does not get its hands dirty. He was 40ish, tan in winter, with hair that had seen arguments and won. I knew his face. I knew, in a way I don't enjoy knowing, the way he placed his phone face down like a promise he didn't mean. He saw me see him and nodded like we were colleagues. He called me chef, without the respect that title should taste like. He ordered the saffron course twice. When he laughed, he touched Rowan's wrist the way people touch a piano when they're not sure it will remember how to be won. She didn't flinch. She also didn't lean. I plated, poured, talked in the language of butter and heat. The room warmed to me the way rooms do when you feed them on time and tell them where to put their hands. There is a part of hosting that feels like seduction and a part that feels like absolution. I juggle both and try not to spill. Whenever I glanced at Rowan, she was not looking at the consulting man. She was watching me the way people watch someone walking a tightrope, hopping not to see a fall, curious about gravity. After the third course, I pulled her into the narrow prep corridor where the light is honest and the air smells like lemon peel and plans. "He's not your date," I said, because sometimes truth needs a shorter hallway. "No," she said. "He's my boyfriend. That's worse or better depending on whose movie you're in." "And you're here because—" "Because Thursday smelled like saffron," she said simply. "Because he started wearing shirts that button properly. Because our dishwasher receipts began to look like hotel receipts. Because you have a blue door and a reputation for making people tell the truth without asking." I exhaled something I hadn't realized I was holding. "Why tonight?" I asked. She tilted her head toward the dining room. "Because he insisted," she said, "which is not his style. He said the blue door is where people bring anniversaries and secrets, and he wants to invest in both." She paused, the kind of pause you put furniture in. "And because I think your wife has started wearing red lipstick to work." I did not flinch. I did not lean. I learned long ago that the difference between a good host and a bad one is invisible, what you do with a truth when it arrives wearing heels. "Let me guess," I said, voice even. "She has a name like a season and a job that steals Saturdays." "Elise," she said. The corridor narrowed the way a throat does before a shout. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For happening to you," she said, and reached out without touching, a kindness as risky as heat. We came back to the table as if nothing had happened, because that is a life skill and a performance note. I fed them roasted figs with mascarpone and a drizzle that made adults close their eyes. I talked about the wine like it belonged to their childhoods. The tan man consulted his reflection in his glass and did not see a man. He saw the story he planned to tell someone later and laughed accordingly. Rowan ate slowly, like each bite might change the ending, and watched me like it might already have. When the last course went out, dark chocolate with salt I pretend not to worship, I told my sous chef to close the show. I walked to the alley where we keep the bins and the secrets that need air. The night had that city smell, a metal warmth with edges. I looked at my phone. No messages, which is a kind of message. Rowan found me there, hands in her coat pockets, shoulders squared like a soldier at ease. Up close, she was less flawless and more beautiful, freckles you only see if you're invited, a curve near her mouth that said she used to laugh with her whole face and could again. "Thank you," she said, "for not performing." "I'm trying very hard to be a person," I said. "So am I," she said, and then with a small, strange smile, Can I ask you for something reckless that isn't destructive?" "In my alley," I said. "That's an ambitious request." "Not that," she said, amused. "Come with me, after they leave, to see where they go. I can't be the kind of woman who sits at a table telling herself he's different, but I don't want to be the woman with the camera in the bushes either. I want confirmation, not a spectacle." "I have a key to confirmation," I said, patting my pocket. "It opens a blue door." We didn't need the blue door to follow them. The tan man made a show of paying for the table with a card that could buy a small principality. He tipped the way men do when they need the room to clap. He slipped a hand to Rowan's back, brief, proprietorial, and whispered something that could have been tomorrow. She smiled a smile I recognized, the one that lets a lie pass through without collecting rent. They left separately because of course. He threw the front with a casual wave. She threw the alley with a hug that meant nothing and everything. A full stop disguised as a comma. I counted to 60 because I am dramatic when no one is watching, then nodded to Rowan. We trailed him at a distance the city teaches, close enough to share his air, far enough not to smell his cologne. He turned east, into a row of buildings with iron balconies that pretend to remember Paris. At the corner, he checked his phone and smiled the dumb, pure smile that makes strangers want to forgive you for things you haven't done yet. He slipped into the side entrance of the Alden, a hotel with the kind of reputation money writes for itself. I felt Rowan's breath catch the way a bow catches a string. "Could be a business meeting," I said gently, as if the words mattered. "Business happens in daylight," she said, "and with fewer mirrors." We didn't go in. The Alden is a mirror too, and mirrors tend to show you money first and mercy last. We stood across the street in the unremarkable shadow of a yoga studio and a locksmith and watched as Elise approached from the west. She wore her camel coat and a scarf I'd bought in a burst of optimism. Her hair was half up in the way she wears it when she wants to look like she didn't try. She glanced once at the river, twice at her phone, and then at the door. She didn't scan for danger. She scanned for him. Rowan made a small sound, nothing like a sob and exactly like a crack. I reached for her hand, and she let me, the way you let someone open a window when a room has forgotten air. We held hands like strangers who had just realized they were in the same story. We could have stormed the lobby. We could have cornered them in an elevator and recited the second act out loud. We didn't. I texted Elise, "I love you. Are you safe?" It is a terrible, noble text that means I know where you are. She didn't reply. Maybe she saw my name and put the phone face down like the tan man at my table. Maybe she saw it and thought of time. Maybe she thought of me, but she went inside. We walked without speaking. We walked past a florist throwing out peonies that still had the idea of beauty on them, past a couple arguing about a cabinet color with the zeal that hides bigger arguments, past a busker playing a song that has taught generations how to be sentimental in public. We walked until the cold remembered us and asked for our attention. At the corner by my restaurant, Rowan stopped. The streetlight made her look like a photograph you only show to people you trust. "I want to do something kind that feels like sin," she said, voice steady. "Will you kiss me? Not as revenge. As proof the world still contains warmth that doesn't lie." I stepped in. Our coats rustled like permission. The kiss was soft, slow, the kind you give when you know time is watching. It didn't try to steal anything. It gave. It tasted like dark chocolate and salt in an alley where we didn't perform. When we parted, her forehead rested against mine as if our skulls had found a truce. "That helps," she said, not smiling exactly. "Thank you." "It helps me too," I said, which was true in a way I hadn't expected. A part of me that had been bracing for impact unclenched, the way a hand does when you remind it what holding is for. We didn't go home together. That would have made everything loud when the best part of the night was how quiet it stayed. We exchanged numbers like adults who have survived a lot of plot and are auditioning for a better genre. She went north. I went west. The blue door looked like it always does, pretending not to be important. The talk with Elise the next day lasted the length of a cup of coffee we didn't finish. She cried in the first 5 minutes and stopped in the sixth. She didn't deny. She did explain, which is a cousin of denial that wants a hug. She said we'd turned into roommates who share a past and a Google Calendar. She said she hadn't planned to fall into anything. It was more like leaning and forgetting to stop. She said she still loved me. I said I still loved her too, which was true. Love is stubborn. But I didn't want to be a museum of our good years. I wanted to be wanted in the present tense. We disentangled like careful surgeons. Lawyers were involved, but so were walks. We decided on Thursdays she would keep the plants, I would keep the cast iron. No one got the blue door because it belongs to a rumor, and rumors are public property. Rowan texted that night, I told him. He tried to monetize regret. I told him to keep the shirts. Then, are you okay? I answered honestly, not yet, but I know where the windows are. Weeks passed in that strange new rhythm grief writes for you. I learned to cook for one without making it a metaphor. I slept on both sides of the bed until the bed stopped asking questions. At the restaurant, the regulars came and went with their customary dramas, and I kept feeding them the kind of food that makes people feel braver than they are. Bravery, it turns out, prefers butter. Rowan and I didn't rush. We met on Sundays when the city takes its makeup off. We walked to the river and talked about the polite lies people tell doctors and chefs, the way good shoes make bad news easier to bear, the fact that you can teach your heart to know the difference between spectacle and intimacy if you're patient. Sometimes she came to the blue door, slipping into the last seat as if the room had been waiting. Sometimes I went to her apartment with a bottle that didn't need to brag, and we cooked together, her chopping with the concentration of a novice violinist, me teaching with my hands where hers agreed. We kissed in hallways and in kitchens, and once in an elevator that made a sound like encouragement. We let our bodies remember without forcing them to predict. The first night we didn't stop at kissing. The lamp was low and the city had turned down its volume. I won't narrate what happened. YouTube doesn't need a diagram, and neither do we. I will say she took my shirt like she'd been given a map, and I followed her breath like a song I'd heard before birth. It was reverent. It was kind. It felt like stepping inside after a storm and finding the furniture unbroken. Now, when time shows up on my tongue, it's because we put it there. When saffron arrives, we call it by name. Elise texts sometimes, not to revisit an old room but to remember the view. She moved to a place with light in the morning. I installed a dimmer where my anger used to be. We will always be a chapter in each other's books, but we are not the last chapter, and that is the mercy. On Thursdays, when the blue door yawns open and the first course begins, I sometimes catch Rowan's eye from across the room. There's a look we've perfected, the look of two people who climbed out of a mess without throwing things. It contains heat, yes, and something like gratitude, and the knowledge that desire behaves best when you let it be honest. After service, we walk past the Alden. We don't look at the side entrance. The peonies in the florist's bin are new. The city has taught me an important recipe. Salt on the tongue, truth in the throat, tenderness where the hands meet. I don't keep the photograph with flower on my cheek on the wall anymore. Not because I'm erasing a life, but because I'm making room for a better story. The frame sits in a box in a closet with our wedding programs and a cork from a bottle that tasted like optimism. Maybe one day I'll hang it in the office, a reminder that joy existed and can again. For now, the wall holds a simple print of the river. The water doesn't try to be more than it is. It moves forward, carrying what it must, letting go of what it can. And on certain nights, behind a cobalt door, 8 people sit down and I cook them honesty disguised as food. When dessert comes, I can hear Rowan's laugh from the corner, warm as a kitchen, bright as a small mercy. I serve the chocolate, sprinkle the salt, and watch the room soften the way rooms do when they sense that somewhere nearby, 2 people are choosing each other without performance. That's a taste you can't fake. That's the kind of flavor that lingers. In the mouth, yes, but also in the choices you make when no one's watching.